My name is Marin Knight, 35 years old. I was sitting at my dining table, laptop open, drowning in color-coded wedding spreadsheets, when the email landed like a brick in my inbox. From Alastair Finch, our subject, prenuptial agreement, Knight, Far, Sterling. I froze. Cole hadn't mentioned a prenup. Not once. We'd had those hazy, what if something happened talks over takeout and wine, mumbling about protecting what we build and being fair. But nothing that involved a man named Alastair and a PDF thicker than my mortgage file. My house, the one we were supposedly building our future in, was mine. I bought it years before Cole, with my own down payment, my own credit, my own signatures on every line. He moved into my place 2 years ago. I paid most of the non-refundable deposits for the wedding. Venue, caterer, band, photographer. We'd had what I thought was a healthy agreement. Some separate accounts, some shared expenses, calm conversations about money. Apparently, we hadn't had all the conversations. My stomach tightened as I clicked the attachment. The document opened with the usual legal throat clearing. Parties' names, effective dates, recitals. Knight is me. Sterling is him. My name looked small on the page, embedded in a forest of clauses and subclauses drafted by a stranger on his behalf. At first glance, it looked almost reasonable. My premarital assets, a house, savings, a modest but healthy investment portfolio, remained mine. His premarital assets, some savings, a car with a loan, a small trust, remained his. Fine. Then I hit the bomb. A section titled Marital Property and Accumulated Assets. It read, in essence, that any assets accumulated during the marriage, regardless of who earned them, would be considered Cole's separate property in the event of a divorce. My future income, my bonuses, anything I bought, joint purchases, all of it defaulted to him. Another clause stated that I would irrevocably waive any right to spousal support, no matter the circumstances, no matter how long the marriage lasted, no matter if I put my career on hold or scaled it back. Then came a clause that made my skin crawl. Any intellectual property, software, or applications I developed during the marriage, even if based on concepts I had already been working on, would be considered Cole's sole property. I sat back, heartbeat thudding in my ears. I am a project manager by title, but I've been quietly building my own small library of apps on the side for years. Nothing huge yet, but promising enough that one or two are starting to generate passive income. I'd told Cole about them. We'd joked about when one of your ideas pops off and we retire early. In this prenup, every one of those future pops belonged to him. The final insult was wrapped in vague language, something about maintaining lifestyle expectations and standards of living in the event that one party pursues other passions or steps back from active employment. In other words, if Cole decided his marketing job wasn't fulfilling anymore and wanted to take a break to find himself, I would be legally bound to maintain his standard of living, with no reciprocal obligation, no safety net for me. It was breathtaking. Not in a cathedral way, in a walking into a trap and realizing the door already locked behind you way. This didn't feel like the man I cooked dinner with, laughed with, kissed goodnight. Or maybe it did. Maybe this was the part of him I hadn't been allowed to see until a lawyer turned it into 27 pages of clauses. I didn't call Cole. The email clearly stated, all communication regarding this agreement should be routed through my office. Fine, Alistair. Message received. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Sarah Miller, my attorney. She'd handled my house purchase and had patiently shepherded me through every terrifying signature line. Hey, Marin, she answered. How's the pre-wedding chaos? I just sent you an email, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Subject line, prenup. Please tell me I'm overreacting. There was a pause. Give me 2 minutes. Those 2 minutes felt like an hour. I stared out the window at the front yard, at the tree I'd planted by myself after moving in. This was home, my home. Suddenly, the idea that anyone could treat my entire future like a bargaining chip lodged in my throat. My phone buzzed. Okay, Sarah said, voice different now. Cool, professional, with an edge of disbelief. You're not overreacting. This is exceptionally aggressive. Is it normal? I asked. Like rich people normal, or we have no idea what we're doing normal? Parts of it are standard, she admitted. Premarital assets staying separate, for example. But the clause about all marital assets defaulting to his separate property, regardless of who earned them, the IP clause about your apps, the lifestyle clause obligating you to maintain his standard if he stops working, that's not a prenup. That's a financial guillotine pointed at your neck. I let out a shaky breath. So what do we do? You do not sign this as is, she said firmly. We can counter with a fair balanced agreement. Joint assets stay joint. Each party retains rights to their own work, reasonable protections for both sides. But you should know something, Marin. What? A lawyer can draft what a client insists on, she said. The extremity of this document reflects a mindset. This isn't just about money, it's about control. Her words landed like stones. Right, I said, then we don't sign. Correct, she replied. I'll email Mr. Finch. Polite, professional, but firm. You're not refusing a prenup, you're refusing this prenup. By Wednesday morning, her email had gone out. Dear Mr. Finch, we represent Ms. Marin Knight and have reviewed the proposed prenuptial agreement. Ms. Knight will not be signing the document in its current form, as it is substantially inequitable. We are prepared to discuss a fair and balanced agreement. However, this initial proposal is not a viable starting point for such discussions. Clean, precise, unapologetic. Thursday afternoon, my phone pinged. A text from Cole. Not a call, a text. Sarah told me you refused to sign, it read. He knew you weren't serious about us or our future. I can't believe you. The wedding's off. I stared at it. 4 years together. 2 years living in my home. A wedding 3 months away. And it all ended in 3 sentences because I wouldn't sign away my rights to my own life. The he knew you weren't serious bit is interesting, Naya would say later when I read it to her. But in that moment, sitting alone at my table, it just hurt. The hurt was real, a dull ache, low and heavy. But overriding it, sliding in like a cold wave, was something else. Understanding. This agreement, this text, it was a spotlight. It illuminated something fundamental that had probably been there all along. I typed back one word. Interesting. Then I set my phone down and called Sarah again. Cole just canceled the wedding by text, I said, because I wouldn't sign the prenup. I heard her sigh. No surprise, just calculation. Okay, let's process this. Practically speaking, what are you most concerned about right now? The deposits, I said. Venue, caterer, photographer, band. We're sitting at what? $28,000? All non-refundable now, all paid from my accounts. He's the one who made marriage contingent on me signing a predatory legal document. He called it off. I want that money back. Sarah didn't hesitate. We can send a formal demand letter, she said. He terminated the agreement to marry due to an unreasonable precondition. We'll outline why he's liable for the forfeited deposits. It's not guaranteed, but you have solid ground to stand on. Do it, I said. Friday morning, Sarah sent a new letter, this time addressed directly to Cole, copied to Finch. Subject: Demand for reimbursement of non-refundable wedding deposits, Knight/Sterling wedding. It spelled out every deposit, every date, every amount. Copies of contracts were attached, highlighting the non-refundable clauses. The conclusion was simple. Since Cole canceled the wedding by insisting on an unconscionable prenuptial agreement and terminating the engagement upon Marion's refusal to sign, he was liable for the $28,000 in resulting losses. Payment requested within 20 business days. The rest of the weekend, I boxed up his things. Surprisingly little, considering he'd been here for 2 years. Mostly clothes, personal effects, no major furniture. He'd sold or given away most of his when he moved in because what's the point of keeping old stuff when we're building something new here? Exactly, I thought, taping up a box of his sweaters. What was the point of keeping someone who wanted to own the new and the old? By Sunday night, his side of the closet was empty. My house was quiet. Mine again. For the first time since the email arrived, I slept through the night. Finch did not disappoint. By Monday afternoon, he replied to Sarah's demand letter with exactly the tone you'd expect from a man who writes emails while swirling a glass of scotch in a leather chair. Ms. Miller, your client's demand is opportunistic. Mr. Sterling's emotional response to Ms. Knight's refusal to secure a mutually beneficial future does not create liability for wedding expenses. Nonetheless, as a gesture of goodwill, my client is willing to offer $5,000 to resolve this unpleasantness. $5,000 for $28,000 in losses? I didn't know whether to laugh or be insulted. Sarah forwarded me the email with a single note. Absolutely not. She replied to Finch in under 10 minutes. Professional, icy, lethal. Given the unilateral termination of the engagement prompted solely by your client's unreasonable precondition, the offer is inadequate. We expect full reimbursement. The line might as well have been a trigger, because 5 hours later, my inbox lit up with messages from Cole's sister, Danielle, the self-appointed moral compass of the Sterling family. Her email was a masterpiece of melodrama. Marin, I am utterly disgusted by your behavior. Cole is devastated. You refused to sign standard paperwork, and now you're extorting him for money? Everyone in our family is horrified. Alistair is one of the best lawyers in the state. You should be grateful someone was trying to protect Cole. Instead, you're destroying him. I stared at the message. Nia, reading over my shoulder, snorted. Girl, is this email written in crayon? Standard paperwork? My foot. I archived it without replying. But they weren't done. Next came a text from Cole himself. Marin, this is insane. Finch told me you're threatening to sue me after you refused to commit. My parents are beside themselves. Mom says this proves you were never serious about us. There it was. Not a conversation. Not accountability. Not an ounce of remorse. Just weaponized shame. Blame. Rewriting history in real time. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Sarah instead. Her answer came quickly. Duly noted. Expected. Hold the line. And so I did. By Thursday, Finch had doubled the offer. $10,000. Still without admitting liability. Still dripping with the same condescension. Sarah replied, full amount or we proceed. Then she attached a spreadsheet. Every receipt, every contract clause, every non-refundable provision neatly highlighted. Evidence stacked like bricks in a wall. Meanwhile, Cole launched a subtle smear campaign. Mutual friends began messaging me. He said you're super private with money. He said he never knew your finances, so the prenup was necessary. He said you refused transparency. Each lie cleaner than the last. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I saved each message, documented it, sent everything to Sarah. She called me that evening. He's panicking, she said. This is classic. They start shifting narratives to justify unreasonable demands. So we just wait? I asked. No, she said. We hold our boundary, and we let him exhaust himself. On Saturday, I was on my knees in the front yard pulling weeds because emotional chaos apparently fuels gardening instincts when a familiar car pulled up to the curb. Cole stepped out. I sat back on my heels, wiped my hands on my jeans, and braced myself. He approached slowly, like he wasn't sure if I would bolt or throw a rake at him. We need to talk, he said. I thought we were supposed to communicate through our lawyers, I said, standing. That's what Finch said, he muttered, waving a dismissive hand. But this is ridiculous. This is between us. No, Cole, I said evenly. The prenup, the wedding cancellation, the $28,000 you want me to eat. That's between all four of us, me, you, Finch, and Sarah. He flinched, like he didn't expect me to be so direct. Look, he said, softening his tone. I was emotional. You embarrassed me by refusing the prenup. No, Cole, I corrected. I protected myself by refusing a document that tried to strip me of everything. He pushed a frustrated hand through his hair. Alistair was just doing his job. He was doing what you, or your mother, asked him to, I said quietly. His jaw tightened. There it is, he snapped. You think my mom is manipulating me? You think this is all her fault? I think the prenup reflects exactly what someone wanted, I said, and that someone wasn't looking out for me. He let out a harsh laugh. My parents said they might help us with the deposits if we just put this behind us. Get back on track. There was an odd, almost triumphant look in his eyes, like he thought he had presented a solution. Back on track? I repeated softly. After you texted me the wedding was off because I wouldn't sign a document that treated me like a liability? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I just want things to go back to normal. Normal. Where I paid everything. Where he took credit for being the provider. Where I bent and he never did. Cole, I said gently, your normal was my slow suffocation. He blinked rapidly but said nothing. My parents think you're being dramatic, he finally muttered. Mom says you're not the woman she thought you were. I nodded slowly. After that prenup, I said, you're not the man I thought you were either. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Something inside him fractured then. Ego, illusion, the belief that I would eventually cave. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. He slammed the door harder than necessary, tires squealing slightly as he pulled away. The dust settled long after he was gone. 3 days later, Finch emailed Sarah again. Offer, $18,000. Threat, If we sued, they'd counter for emotional distress. Sarah called me immediately. "That is empty bluster," she said. "Threatening a countersuit is textbook from lawyers on the weaker side of the argument. He's testing how badly you want to avoid court. Don't flinch." "I won't," I said. "Good," she replied, "because I'm giving Finch a final deadline. Full amount, or we file in district court." "District court?" I repeated. It signals we're serious and that we're ready for a fight. My heart pounded. Court. Lawsuits. Hearings. This was no longer a breakup. This was a battle. But when I hung up with Sarah, I realized something. I wasn't scared. I was done being pushed, done being manipulated, done letting love be used as leverage. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt steady. I felt like myself again. The deadline came and went with no payment, not even a counteroffer, just silence. And that silence was loud, the kind that tells you the other side isn't confident. They're scrambling, hoping you blink first. Sarah didn't blink. She filed the lawsuit the next morning. Breach of contract. Financial losses resulting from an unreasonable precondition to marriage. $28,000 plus fees. Seeing the official court documents with Sterling printed in bold at the top, I shouldn't have felt satisfaction. But I did. A clean, level kind of satisfaction, the kind that happens when truth finally has structure. 3 days later, the process server delivered the summons to Cole's parents' house, where he'd been staying since the breakup. And that's when everything shifted. Not immediately, not with screaming or panic, but with pressure, subtle and mounting, pressure coming from inside their own walls. It started with a message from a mutual acquaintance, someone who lived 2 doors down from Cole's parents. A voice memo, hushed and breathless. "Marin, I just wanted you to know. Cole's dad, Bill, looks like he's about to murder someone. He was yelling in the driveway this morning. Something about, 'I won't let this family get dragged into court over your mother's foolish pride.'" Bill, quiet, soft-spoken Bill. The man who had always smiled gently at me across holiday dinners and slipped me an extra helping of mashed potatoes. Apparently, the lawsuit hit him like a cold bucket of reality. 2 hours later, I got another message. "Girl, Bill told Karen that if she and Cole didn't settle, he would hire his own lawyer and side with you because he refused to fund their circus any longer. I'm dead. This is better than TV." I blinked hard. Bill, the man who barely said 10 words during family gatherings, the one person in the Sterling household who had never once judged me. He was the one calling for peace, calling for sense, calling out his wife and son. According to our mutual acquaintance, that very night there was shouting, actual shouting, inside the Sterling home. Karen, she should have just signed it. That's what normal women do. Bill, normal women? You wanted that girl to sign away her life. Even Finch said it was extreme. Cole, she's being dramatic, Dad. Bill, no, Cole, she caught you. That prenup was a trap, and you walked us all right into it. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't hearsay. This was collapse. The facade of the perfect, elegant Sterling family was cracking in real time, and the truth was spilling out like water through a widening dam. 3 days after the summons, Sarah received a call. Her email summary to me was short and satisfying. Finch's tone has shifted. Significant change. He's signaling a desire to settle. Will update. Sarah. That afternoon, she called me directly. "So," she said, and I could hear her smiling through the phone, "Finch is no longer confident." What did he say? He reiterated, again, that his client is prepared to vigorously defend this case, but then immediately followed it with, "Of course, the Sterlings are very interested in avoiding unnecessary litigation." Translation: they were scared. Litigation was expensive, public, humiliating. Especially when the prenup they hoped to defend was so lopsided it practically screamed, "We wanted everything and offered nothing." Sarah continued, "He wants to begin discussing a comprehensive settlement resolution." What does that mean? It means they're ready to pay. They just want to pretend it was their idea. I sank into my couch, relief loosening a tension I hadn't realized lived in my spine. Over the next several days, emails pinged back and forth. Finch tried everything. Legal jargon, faux indignation, attempts to make the $28,000 seem unreasonable, implications that both parties should share the burden. Sarah, unbothered, replied to each point with sheer precision. The wedding was canceled because Cole imposed a last-minute, unreasonable demand. Marin paid the deposits. Cole terminated the engagement. Therefore, Cole was liable. Full reimbursement required. Non-negotiable. Finch pushed back. Sarah pushed harder. Finally, the story behind the scenes reached us. A mutual cousin called me. Marin, you didn't hear this from me, she whispered. But Bill told Karen and Cole he refuses to watch them flush family money down a lawsuit they'll lose. He said if they don't settle, he'll testify on your side. I sat in stunned silence. Bill, Cole's father. Quiet, calm, cardigan-wearing Bill. He was the one who snapped the whole thing into reality. He said the prenup was Karen's idea, she continued. He said he warned her it was too aggressive, but she wanted to protect the Sterling legacy, whatever that means. I closed my eyes. It wasn't just Cole. It was the whole structure around him. Entitlement passed down like family china. Bill, apparently, had enough. He gave an ultimatum. Settle with Marin. Pay every penny. Or handle the lawsuit without his support and without his money. And suddenly, Finch folded. Wednesday morning, Sarah received the call we had been waiting for. Miss Miller, Finch said, much more polite than usual. My clients are prepared to offer the full $28,000 to settle this matter, provided Ms. Knight agrees to mutual non-disparagement and withdraws the lawsuit after receiving funds. Additionally, they request compensation for their filing fees and service costs. Sarah asked calmly, what amount are they requesting?
6.
Done, Sarah said. He sounded stunned. You'll accept that? Yes, she replied, because we have nothing to hide. The certified check arrived 4 days later. $28,150, made out to Marin Knight. I drove to Sarah's office, sat across from her conference table, and signed the final settlement and the lawsuit withdrawal. That was it. No courtroom scene, no dramatic standoff, no tearful confrontation. Just a clean, quiet ending. A future protected. A bullet dodged. That evening, I received one final email from Danielle. I hope you feel good about yourself, Marin. My brother is devastated. This whole ordeal has been traumatic for our family. And all because you couldn't compromise, all over some money. I read it once. I archived it. I didn't respond. Some people will never understand the difference between money and autonomy. Some people will never admit when their manipulation fails. Some people will never accept that the problem wasn't the wedding. It was the person I was about to marry. The next morning, I walked barefoot across my living room, sunlight warming the floorboards I'd refinished myself. This house, my house, was quiet, peaceful, steady. Nobody threatening my stability, nobody attaching conditions to my love, nobody drafting contracts to control my life. I poured myself coffee and stepped onto the back porch. The air felt different, crisp, open. I thought of the prenup, the text that ended everything, the lawsuit, the settlement, the man I almost married. And I felt nothing but relief. Not because I'd won money, but because I'd won myself. The real victory wasn't the check. It was the fact that I saw the red flag, believed what it meant, and refused to walk blind into a future where my worth was negotiable. I didn't lose a marriage. I avoided a trap. And for the first time in months, I breathed, full, deep, unburdened, and smiled.